요즘 제가 제일 좋아하는
여러분
엘리.
기억하세요? 제가 그렇게 극찬했던 성난 사람들이 시즌2로 돌아왔습니다.
결국은 둘이 같은 처지예요.
스티븐 연을 세계적인 스타로 만들어 놓은 시리즈 시즌1이 도로 위라는 개방된 공간에서 시작했다면 시즌2는 컨트리클럽이라는 폐쇄적인 공간에서 전혀 다른 스토리로 전개되는데요. 무려 윤여정, 송강호 배우의 오스카 아이작, 캐리 멀리건 등 네로라 하는 할리우드 배우들까지 가세했죠. 시즌1의 성공 뒤에는 바로 한국계 미국인 이성진 감독이 있었는데요. 시작하기 전에 매주 가장 핫한 콘텐츠 소식 받고 싶다면 구독과 좋아요 그리고 따뜻한 댓글 부탁드려요. 첫 시즌도 감독님이 실제로 겪은 보복 운전의 경험이 모티브가 됐었는데 이번에도 역시 개인적인 경험에서 영감을 얻으셨대요. 어느 날 우연히 이웃집에서 나는 부부싸움 소리를 듣게 됐는데 그 얘기를 접한 사람들의 반응이 연령대마다 크게 달랐던 거죠. 그래서 이런 세대 간의 차이점을 보여주기 위해서 서로 다른 세대에 속해 서로 다른 삶의 단계를 살고 있는 네 쌍의 커플을 캐릭터로 설정했는데요. 단순히 베이비부머 부모 세대와 어린 자녀 세대 사이에서의 전형적인 세대 차이뿐 아니라 보다 더 미묘한 밀레니얼 세대와 젠지 세대의 특성을 영리하고도 섬세하게 대비시켰습니다. 한국인 캐릭터를 미국 내 골프장을 인수한 최상위 계층으로 설정하고 후반부엔 아예 무대를 한국으로 옮겨오기도 했어요. 시즌1보다 더 재밌는 시즌2. 이번에도 제작과 각본, 연출을 총괄한 이성진 감독과 시즌2 이야기 나눠볼게요. 네, 이제 제가 이성진 감독님이자 작가님을 인터뷰할 텐데요. 이성진 감독님은 성함이 한국 성함이시잖아요. 그런데 아주 어렸을 때 미국으로 건너가셨고 초등학교 때 잠깐 한국에서 학교를 다니긴 했지만 영어가 훨씬 편하신 분이어서 인터뷰는 영어로 진행을 하게 됐습니다. 그런데 특이한 게 이성진 감독님이 친구들 사이에서는 소니 리라는 이름으로 불리고 있기는 하지만 그래도 여전히 크레딧에서 이성진이라는 한글 이름 석자로 활동을 하고 계신 분인데요. 한국인이라는 게 또 자랑스러워서 이름을 굳이 바꾸지 않으셨다고 합니다. 지금 미국 시간 저녁 6시 정도 됐는데요. 인터뷰 시작해볼까요? My name is An Hyunmo and I'm speaking to you from Seoul, Korea.
Nice to meet you.
What a pleasure to talk with you. Do you want to say hello to the audience in Korea first?
Okay, sure, yeah. 네, 안녕하세요. 감사합니다 for watching.
That was very short and quick. First of all, I've got to say this before we begin. I really love the first season of Beef. I loved the acting, I loved the stories, and I loved your style and everything. And back then, I had no idea I'd be interviewing you someday or anyone involved in the show at all. I genuinely enjoyed watching the series from a pure audience's point of view.
Oh, thank you.
And 3 years later, now I'm having this conversation with the creator himself. And I really have to say that I enjoyed watching the second season even more.
Oh, wow.
You are a genius.
Thank you, that's very kind.
I'm sure all of the fans of Beef will love this new season too. It is so well done.
Oh, wow, thank you so much.
It is not rare or not medium rare. You cooked it just perfectly.
Thank you.
나는 고기도 안 먹는 사람인데 주말 내내 비프에 빠져서 비프 생각만 했다고 농담도 하며 즐겁게 대화를 시작했는데요.
Wow, that's very healthy.
첫 번째 질문은 이번 시즌이 지난 시즌에서 연결되지 않는 완전히 새로운 인물들이 이끌어가는 완전히 새로운 이야기라는 점에서 출발했어요. And there are so many interesting points that I'd like to discuss with you. So why don't we begin with the important fact that this is an entirely different story with an entirely new cast and an entirely new beef. I'm sure there are a lot of people who might have expected to see Steven Yeun and Ali Wong and see how Danny and Amy are doing, but you decided to take us on a totally unexpected journey. So what's the reason you made it an anthology instead of a sequel?
You know, in my initial pitch to networks before we sold the show, you know, I pitched the first season, the limited season, but then I added a couple slides at the end of examples of how it could be an anthology. You know, I think one was Beef in a high school orchestra, because I was a concertmaster of my high school orchestra. I think another one was about triplets. And, you know, the network had no interest in any of those. They just wanted to, they only had interest in that first season. And so, you know, we made the show as a limited, and even during the awards run, we still hadn't gotten a season 2 pickup, and I was getting nervous. And I pitched all sorts of ideas. I pitched a season about men's doubles tennis partnership that breaks up, and that beef. But then Challengers came out. And so I kept pitching, and Ginny Howe, who, you know, runs the drama department, and now more than the drama department of Netflix, she pulled me aside and she told me, Sonny, I can tell you're just pitching to pitch. We don't have to do a season 2 of Beef. We can do another show together. You should only do a second season of Beef if you find something that you're passionate about. And she was right. And so I took a minute to really reflect on that. And it wasn't until a real life incident again kind of hit me in the face that I discovered what I wanted to write about. And it was when I overheard a very loud argument in a couple's home in my general neighborhood. I'll kind of speak vaguely because I still live in that neighborhood. But, you know, what I found interesting wasn't so much the incident itself, but how people reacted when I told that story. I found that a lot of my Gen Z peers, they kind of, you know, reacted the way Ashley and Austin did, where they were like, did you call 911? Are they okay? And then all my...
They started recording things?
Yeah, well, they probably wish I did. And then a lot of my millennial and Gen X peers, they kind of were like, it's not a big deal. I mean, like, everybody fights. And so,
wow.
Yeah, that dichotomy of reactions is what I found fascinating. I thought there could be a really interesting show that displays marriage and love over different periods of time, over different periods of life. And when I pitched that to Netflix, they finally agreed that this is something that season 2 should be about.
Based on that personal incident of accidentally overhearing other people's trouble that you said, you very cleverly devised 4 couples, each living in a different phase in life, to show the generational divide. Not only the kind of typical divide between boomers versus kids, but also the more subtle and sensitive one between the millennials and Gen Z. And by the way, in Korea, there's a specific term we use. We actually combine those born in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s and call them MZ generation altogether.
Oh, wow.
Simply combining millennials and Gen Z together. But even though they share a number of traits in common and it's convenient to group them together as a big consumer group, millennials and Gen Z are 2 distinct cohorts. And no matter how you call them, whatever year we're living in, people in their 20s cannot be the same as people in their 30s or 40s in terms of how they view work, relationship, and just life in general. So what do you think is the most prominent difference between these 2 groups? I'd like to hear in your own words.
You know, I think it's really where they're at. It's their distance from death. You know, it's like
Wow.
as you hit your 40s, you're midlife, and so you start reflecting on things for the first time.
That's great. That's really good.
You know, I remember being a writer in my 20s, being a lower level writer on shows, and being so judgmental about writers in their 40s, thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe they're making us stay till 7 p.m. They must hate their families, you know? Then here I am in my 40s. I have a 1-year-old daughter, and I'm working late every day. So now I'm humbled by life. And so not to say that the ideals that you hold in your youth are incorrect. I think a lot of those ideals are right. Time with your family is more important than work. But I think what you forget in youth is that you learn as you get older that you have to make compromises. The system we live in is very difficult in terms of the societal pressures of capitalism kind of turning their screws on everybody. So there's a lot of things you don't consider in your youth. So I think really it's that proximity to death that is the difference between generations.
I'd like to think that we're still far away from death, but obviously both you and I belong to the millennial. So I'd like to ask you, among all the characters, is there someone you feel like you can relate to more than to the others?
This show and all the characters are born out of so many conversations and collaborations with everybody. There's writers, there's actors, there's the HODs. Nothing is just from me alone. And so I do find a little bit of myself in all the characters. Even Chairwoman Park a little bit, I find some similarities. I find some similarities between myself and Ashley and Austin, Josh and Lindsay. So, that's the hope for me, is that when people watch, they'll over the season find that their allegiances change and the relatabilities also change over time.
As much as the generational complexities were highlighted throughout the show, we get to realize towards the end of the show that there's a growing understanding and also becoming the older generation's version, thanks to the natural passage of time and, more importantly, to the pressures of capitalism. So quite sadly and ironically, to me, it's the pressures of existing what initially exacerbate the generational clash, but at the same time, it's what narrow the gap by slowly transforming the younger generation to look like and act like the older generation. I don't know if I'm putting it the right way,
No,
but
you absolutely are, yeah.
But what I'd like to emphasize is this could have been just a blistering satire about love getting defeated by capitalistic motifs, but you didn't write it that way. I'm not going to say through which character, but I believe you showed us that love can still win and survive. And that is a strict contrast to what Chairman Park says. Is that something you try to preserve, keeping the balance and not taking sides?
That's a great question. Yes, that is a goal for us as writers. We don't want to judge anybody's decisions in the show. I think we're just trying to present actions and consequences that hopefully feel true to a lot of people. And then, that's why we had that long top shot to end the show. That's actually something that we discovered late into the edit, and we reshot to grab, we didn't have that top shot initially. We came up with that idea
the
really
zooming
late.
out shot.
Yes, yeah. And so we did that because we wanted to give the audience space to sit and interpret and project their own emotions onto it, just so that, like you're saying, that this isn't a satire. I mean, there's aspects of Beef that are satirical, but that ultimately you're finding a common humanity in everything that you've witnessed, and it's hopefully making you reflect on your own life. The last shot is really a depiction of samsara. It's inspired by Buddhist and Hindu paintings, and so I leave it to each person, depending on where they're at in their individual lives, to wrestle with the concept of samsara.
Yeah, definitely. You were giving us a room to reflect on what Yoon just said, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, we began by hitting some deep, deep thoughts, only because the show is so realistic and thought-provoking. But turning things a little bit to a lighter side, let's talk about the casting now.
Sure.
What I found noticeable is that, unlike the previous season, which was full of Asian actors, in this new season, you have a predominantly non-Asian cast, with only a couple or 3 exceptions. And it's not just the number of Asian actors that has changed, it's the angle that has totally shifted. You put these Korean characters at the top of the food chain,
Yes.
depicting super rich, super successful businesswomen, whereas in the first season, the protagonist and his family were depicted as hustling immigrants who are trying so hard to achieve their American dream. Is this an intended turn of the table?
Yeah, it's just not wanting to repeat myself. I think, again, with my favorite bands and musicians, debut album to sophomore album, the ones that feel the same, I start to lose interest. Whereas bands like Radiohead that go from Pablo Honey to The Bends to OK Computer, which is probably the best 3-album evolution of all time, that's inspiring to me. And so when I look at our sophomore album, our season 2, I'm trying to look at different ways we can approach things, different aspects of the Asian experience that we can explore. So we didn't get to explore the experience of someone half Korean in season 1. A lot of the writers on our show are half Asian or half Korean. My daughter is half Korean. And so, that felt very fertile. And likewise, we showed, Danny's immigrant, lower class, hustling experience season 1. Well, what's the inverse of that? Korean chaebol society. There's nothing more glamorous and elegant and alluring than being able to be in the inner circle of one of 6 families that control everything. And so, we're just constantly looking for different shapes, different angles, because, I think that's what's fun about writing is that you get to explore new things.
And speaking of the chaebol, Chairman Park, I heard that it's been a bucket list dream for you to work with 윤여정 and 송강호.
Yes.
Why so, and how did you end up getting a yes from them? I heard that Song initially said no.
Yeah, they're the 2 greatest actors, not only of Korean history, but just history. I think, 윤여정 in her 20s, the work that she did with director Kim, foundational to Korean cinema. And you look at 송강호 and his breadth of work, from everything from Memories of Murder to Parasite. He's just done it all. And, so I knew that the Korea side would be important to season 2. I thought, why not shoot for the moon? And I had gotten to know 윤여정 선생님 through Stephen Yeun. Obviously, they worked together on Minari. And, when I pitched her the idea, she was laughing so hard because she told me that she thinks nobody in Korea would have ever written her a part where she has a husband 20 years younger. And
Good for her.
Yeah, so, I think she's always seeking to do new things as well. And then, I told her that I wanted to try for 송강호 선생님 to be that younger husband, and she just thought that was such a, smart choice. And I sent him a scene, and he told me no. He was like, I don't know how to play this character. So then I called YJ, and I was like, 죄송합니다. 제가 잘 못했어요. And she decided to call him directly herself.
And it worked.
And it worked. She was like, hey, you're 송강호. You can do anything. You're the greatest actor. You can figure out this part. And I think out of respect for YJ, he agreed, and I'm so thankful.
Wow. But I heard that you kept revising Yoon's lines on the set. So at one point, she had to tell you to stop changing her lines. Is that true? What happened?
Well, I'm always changing things. I'm always discovering things as I, prep the scenes for the next day. I'm always tinkering. The only reason I ever deliver the show is because there's a deadline. So, I think YJ likes to be prepared, and also, she told me that she needs more time to prepare her English. So she was like, please stop. You can change my Korean lines, but please stop touching my English lines. And so I try to always give her a heads up if I started revising anything in English.
Oh, the time is ticking so fast. After watching the new series, what kind of takeaway do you hope and expect the audience in Korea and around the world to get?
I think it's hopefully walking away with your own interpretation and your own way of dealing with samsara, with this eternal cycle of life and death and love and suffering that we're all trapped in. I'm hoping everyone walks away with their own conclusions on what we do with that.
Thanks so much for the talk. Wish you all the best of success.
Thank you
Good
for
luck
the
with
support.
the
Thank
Emmy.
you. Thank you very much.
Bye. See you in Korea next time.
Yes, I would love to. Yes.
Bye. Take care. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
그런데 놓치면 안 될 이번 주 새로운 작품들이 더 있죠. 나의 아저씨, 또 오해영, 나의 해방일지의 폐영 작가가 새 드라마로 돌아왔습니다. 제목부터 범상치 않은데요. 모두가 자신의 무가치함과 싸우고 있다. 일명 모자 못사라고 줄여서 부르는 이 드라마는 잘 나가는 친구들 사이에서 시기와 질투로 괴로워하는 인간의 내면을 파고드는 이야기라고 하죠. 구교환과 고윤정이 외로운 순간을 혼자 감당하는 이들에게 함께 헤매고 견뎌내는 게 어떻겠냐는 메시지를 전한다는데요. 박혜영 작가와 동백꽃 필 무렵에 차영훈 감독이 만나 지친 현대인들을 위로하는 온기 가득한 시간. JTBC 토일 드라마 모자 무사 주목해 보시죠.
겪어보려고요, 한동만.
그런가 하면 유쾌 발랄 코믹한 로맨스 드라마도 찾아옵니다. 감다살 배우 신하선과 공명이 카리스마 감사실장과 그녀가 콕 찍어서 감사실로 좌천된 직원으로 아찔하게 만나는 은밀한 감사인데요. 사내 풍기문란을 조사하는 감사실에서 철저하게 감사하다가 사랑에 빠지는 아슬아슬한 관계 역전 로맨스. TVN에서 25일 공개되는 토일 드라마 은밀한 감사로 가슴 설레는 주말 보내는 건 어떨까요?
이 값을 반드시 치르게. 재밌네.
여러분, 라플위클리 스피노프 안현모의 라플위클리 핫앤뉴 7화 어떠셨나요? 매주 영화 OTT뿐 아니라 공연 전시까지 가장 핫한 콘텐츠 추천해 드릴게요. 알고리즘보다 정확한 2주의 콘텐츠 픽 라플위클리 핫앤뉴. 이번 주도 즐겁게 보내시고요. 다음 주 월요일에 다시 만나요. 안녕.
Don't people say you shouldn't be looking for the right person, but actually the right wrong person?